Welcome back to Publishing Power Play. I am here with a fabulous guest. I know you guys have seen him on YouTube because he's blowing up everywhere. But I'm here with Brenden, and he's with the inventor or the creator of MasterTalk. He is an incredible coach for helping you pitch yourself, get on stages, speak in your beautiful zone without taking your personality away, which we were just talking about. Welcome to the show, Brenden.
Jana, the pleasure is absolutely mine. Thanks for having me.
I'm so glad. I don't do very many guests here because there's not people that I feel are that well educated in the area and been doing it that long that can go out there and start giving those little golden nuggets to people, helping them get published or get on those big stages, right? Or stop selling themselves and saying, yeah, I'll pay you this much to get on your stage, and being able to pick the right stage for them, right? I think people are just so excited to get on stage. They're speaking to, I don't know, auto mechanics, but they're in the health and wellness industry. And they were just so excited to get on stage.
I love that. I completely agree.
I want to talk to you about some secrets behind selling yourself. We were just talking about when you're booking an audience for a stage presence, right? You're picking that keynote speaker that's going to draw in. You're picking someone in the science field so they can talk about all the technical parts about what's moving, forward. You find the person who comes in motivating you, that's a motivator, the inspirational speaker for those people who need some inspiration. You're there to speak as yourself in whatever that field is that they bring you in. So let's talk about a few of the secrets behind that.
Yeah, absolutely, Jana. So, the way that I think about this, going back to what you said so brilliantly around how every professional speaker, whether it's Brene Brown, Gary Vaynerchuk, Tony Robbins, they all have different styles, but the same level of success. So, the first step before we go into the very tactical advice on what to actually practice in our voice and how we talk, it's really about the bigger question, which is which kind of speaker do we actually want to be? And the easiest way to do this is to just look up speakers online. This is what I used to do when I was much younger. I think I started in this business when I was 19 years old. So it's a long time, almost a decade now at this point. And what I used to do, Jenna, over lunch is I would watch TED Talks while I was eating my lunch. And I did that every single day. And then I would ask myself, which speaker do I feel was most aligned with my style? So, for example, somebody who's more introverted, if they try talking like Tony Robbins, it just won't work for them because their energy isn't aligned to that type of communicator. But the opposite is true with Susan Cain, who's the host of and the author of the book Quiet, where when you're more introvert, you start to speak like her, you go, oh, it's like my voice is really resonating. So the key is really to pick the right speakers that fit our style and to study those three people more deeply in the same way that for me, it just so happens that Gary Vaynerchuk, Alex Hormozy, those type of alpha male figures are a lot more aligned with the voice that I use in my communication.
I love it. I feel like when I showed up, it was always for inspiration. I was always the inspirational speaker because I felt like I was leaving a heartbeat behind. I was connecting with my audience on an emotional level. Like I know that they would be crying or they would be laughing at the right spots, and I was moving them through the story and the journey. So for me, that became my favorite place to speak. Like not so much in the motivational thing, although that's what I do with my coaching. But when I'm on stage, I want to inspire. I want them to be moved and feel something when they walk away from my talk.
I love that. And I can see that, by the way. You
Oh,
definitely have that energy when you're speaking. So I totally agree.
and we were just talking too about when you find a coach to help you, and you should, if you want to be on stages, you should find a coach. If you want to do a TED talk, it's all speaking, you should find a coach. It's so important to get coached because you have one moment in time, wherever that is, to leave the impression you want to leave. And it's got to be not like throwing spaghetti against the wall and just throwing everything out there. It's about really refining what your message is and how you want to present it and how you want them to receive it. And so finding a coach is super important. So I know that I was just telling Brenden that I'm going to be sending a ton of people. I'm always looking for people to help coach my team or my clients to do TED Talks because they're brilliant and they need to be there. And they have the story. They don't necessarily have the delivery method in that story. It gets messed up in their personal experience with it and the message they're sending. So we were just talking about how some coaches kind of fit you into everyone looks the same on stage. You can't talk too fast. You can't get emotional. You can't talk too slow. Whatever it is that they're teaching you, it's not you. It's not your essence. It's not who you are. And when you show up doing it that way, it may sound amazing, but it will come off unauthentic. And people won't trust you when they don't believe how you're delivering something to them. So you have to be super careful and walk that line. I'm hoping you can give our listeners some tips on how they can do that. Because tips are the first step to getting a coach. Your tip number one, get a coach.
Absolutely, Jana. And since TED is a big piece for your audience, I'm actually happy to speak specifically into that framework, and then we can give general tips on speaking after. More than happy to do that. So what is a TEDx talk at the end of the day? And you actually summarized it pretty well. I'll just use different words, which is how do you present your life's work in 18 minutes or less? That is really the frame that we need to tackle TED with. So when we're given that opportunity, the biggest mistake I find a lot of my clients make in that context, Jana, is they wait until they get the opportunity to start practicing. And that's a big mistake, because if you start pitching yourself, let's say you got a media person on your team and you pitch across 50 different TEDx stages and you start getting a bunch of offers, those stages that you might want might say, hey, we need you to present this TEDx talk in 6 months, and we're going to start practicing this live in person 3-4 months, and just to see what the quality of the talk looks like. So you don't want to feel rushed to present your life's work. So my number one piece of advice, and there's 3 specifically for TED, is the first one is to start actually thinking about that right now. What is your key idea? If you were to summarize your life's works in 18 minutes, what would that look like? And start scripting that out. That's tip 1. Tip 2 with TED is, and this applies with any presentation, it's like jigsaw puzzles. So when we work on a jigsaw puzzle, Jana, which pieces do we start with first and why? And the answer, yeah, go ahead, jump in.
The outline.
Yes. And why is that?
Because it's easier to fill when you have the outline, it's easier to fill the inside in.
Exactly. Perfect. You're clearly a puzzle expert. I love that. So the question now becomes, why am I talking about puzzles? Because in presentations, Jana, unfortunately, whether it's with TED or with anything, we don't do that. We start with the middle first. We start shoving a bunch of content in our speeches. We get to the presentation, we'll ramble throughout the whole thing. And the last slide sounds something like, yeah, so thanks. Not the right approach. So instead, what you want to do is practice like a jigsaw puzzle. Edges first. Just at the beginning of your TEDx, the first 2 minutes, do that 10, 20 times. It sounds like a lot of work, but it's a 2-minute intro. So it's a 40-minute exercise. Same thing with the close. What's a great movie with the terrible ending? Last time I checked, terrible movie. So do the same thing with the conclusion, then tackle the middle.
I love that. Did you have a tip 3 or did we get that?
Absolutely happy to jump into tip 3. I just feel I was rambling a little bit too much there. So tip number 3 with TED is a framework I teach called SIT. So sit, which is what you do at the middle. But I want to level set here. To your point, there's different frames of presenting a TEDx talk. I'm just explaining the most common for people who are really lost and just need something to package. So SIT stands for story, insight, right? So story, insight, and then traction. Story, insight, traction, or tips. So let's start with story. What is the story that allowed you to discover your life's work? Were you on a trip in Guatemala and you realized something was happening, and then you said, oh my God, I need to start doing this? Was it a weight loss journey that you're on? What was the story behind why you went into the work that you're doing and why you're on that TEDx stage today? I is insight. You can go in different directions with insight. You talked about the science guy, statistics, the history. There's so many different ways, but the easiest one is simply, why should we care about this topic? Why is this important to us? Why should us as the audience who has no context on your expertise go, my God, this is important? Simon Sinek did a fantastic job with this in his TEDx talk entitled Start With Why, where he really convinced the audience of a new concept, which is, hey, if you don't talk about why you do the things that you do in your business, no one's going to buy from you. And that's why HP doesn't have the same amount of sales as Apple does. So that's I. And then finally, T is just tip. Leave us with at least one practical tip that I can implement right now that will make my life better. And that's it.
I love it. I got to tell you, first of all, Simon Sinek is one of my favorites, but also is Les Brown. Les Brown was the very first motivational speaker I heard decades ago. I recently, last December, was on a stage with him, and he was the same exact story that he told before. He didn't change the story at all. It was still powerful. It still impacted me, but it changed my life. So when you get it right and you get all the things, you sit with your sit, get it good, and you get it out there, you have the capability of impacting someone in that audience for the rest of their lives. And he did that for me. I remember he talks about being hungry. But he did add to this one that I didn't know that he was adopted, and he found his real mom, where his family was from. She had passed, but he came from a long line of speakers. They even have his grandmother on a statue, like back speaking about being hungry. And it was the same story, and he never even knew them. Is that weird that that was threaded in through his whole communication later, which made the story that he told me decades ago even that more powerful? So he used the same story and enhanced it with what he'd learned about himself through the years, which was really powerful for me.
I mean, you had so many great points there, Jana. First of all, is I actually didn't know the last 20% of Les's story and how his grandmother, like I knew the 80%, then you start talking about the rest, and I was like, wow, even I'm learning a lot on this show. So that's one piece. The other piece that I want to dive into that nobody talks about on podcasts is, why do professional speakers use the same story all the time? There's two main reasons for that. And Tony Robbins does the same as well. He's been doing Unleash the Power Within. I've been blessed to attend many of them. I had so much fun at his events. Whereas he's been doing it for 40 years almost now. It's the same message, the same event. So there's two reasons. The first one is the person you were, Jenna, when you watched Les Brown decades ago, even if 80% of it was the same story, is not the same person that you are today. You're obviously a lot more successful. You have a lot more accolades. You've matured a lot in life emotionally. So the insight, and I'm using you as an example for an audience member, is going to take that same message differently. The second reason is because even if the story is the same, the audience almost never isn't. Almost never isn't. Just funny enough, this is so random. I was on TikTok this morning, and there's this really famous Thai celebrity in Thailand who was giving away a free lunch to everyone at the store. And I was just thinking to myself, wow, like this guy spent his whole life in his career. He's so famous in Thailand, yet me and you probably still don't know who that person is. And that really implores us to believe that it doesn't matter how good the story is, you should always keep it, because there's always somebody who hasn't heard it.
I agree. It gave me a whole different impact when I heard it the next time, decades later. And literally, I wanted to do what he did because of that. I wanted, mostly not because he was on stage speaking, but because of the way he changed those lives and the people sitting in the audience. Because when you're ready to give up, sometimes just those little words that you're passing on to someone might be exactly what they needed to hear to take the next step, or to have the courage to do that, which is what it was for me. And so for me, it was powerful, impactful, and I never forgot it. And then to be standing on a stage that he is speaking on decades later, knowing that was my first motivational speaker, and I never forgot it. It was powerful for me.
I love that. I had a similar experience with Gary Vaynerchuk, where I saw him speak in not 2019, 2017. This is long before I started MasterTalk and all that. And really the insight at the beginning was, hey, I should just create content because I'm being a coward right now. Like, I have knowledge to share. I'm not doing it. And Gary's really pushing us in his own way, in his own Brooklyn style, aggressive Jersey accent, to say, hey, take action. Whereas in 2023, when I'm listening to Gary now, the insight's completely different. Now we're analyzing his brand end to end. We're looking at his monetization strategy across all the platforms. And I'm going, what is he doing that's new and fresh that I'm not doing with my brand right now? So the questions have completely changed, because as human beings, we've evolved over time, but their message has stayed the same.
They did. Here's another thing I hear all the time. Maybe you can help disclaim this. I have a lot of amazing clients that are celebrities, and they're shy, by the way. They are very intimidated to get on stage and speak. And so they tell me that's very narcissistic. People who are on stage constantly talking about themselves or sharing their stories, like it's just old, nobody cares. Here's the thing. I was that younger girl sitting in an audience, and it's exactly what I needed to hear to move forward. And I'm not that unique. There are a lot of people sitting in the audience needing to hear your story, your journey. and how you survived it or the tips that you used or just move through that so that they can move on. It is the least selfish thing you can do when you share a story. It's literally a heartbeat that goes out to every single person. And some of them, it's just the right time to receive it and you change their lives. So it's the least selfish thing you can do.
I mean, you're absolutely right on that, Janet. And I found that very surprising in my career too, where I've seen celebrities who are really potent in a movie, right, in theater, in a different area of life. And the reason they get nervous, in my opinion, and you probably already know this, is because the format is changing. So let's say their whole life, let's say we take a movie actor to keep it simple. So their whole life they're doing method acting and they're telling themselves, okay, in this movie, I'm going to play this certain character and I'm going to ace that role. And they do it flawlessly. That's why they win the Oscars and the Tonys and all that jazz, which is obviously isn't my world. But then when they go into public speaking, they feel that nervousness, A, because of what you said, the hey, I'm sharing an idea, what do people think of me? But then the other reason is because they feel uncomfortable because it almost feels like they're starting from zero again because it's a completely new format that they're not familiar with. So they just have to learn from scratch. That's one piece. The other piece that I'd say, because I'll just assume some of your audience is celebrity, so that might be useful to them,
All right.
is the way we overcome that is what a lot of my celebs miss is that when they're speaking, they forget to realize that even if they're sharing the same tips as Les Brown and Tony Robbins or anything like that, even if they just copy paste, it's actually 100 times more impactful for the specific audience they're speaking to because they already have brand value with those people. So they're going into that crowd going, oh, like it's Michael Jordan presented, you're a basketball fan. You're going, oh my God, like I love MJ. I've watched all his games. So even if MJ might not be the best speaker in the world, because he's sharing a simple thought like never give up, that's the one thought that people are going to say, yeah, I'm not going to give up. I'm actually going to achieve it. And that's how I push people at that level to just say, hey, go out and share your message. Because even it's the same one, there's 10,000 people out there who will only listen to you. So you might as well share it with them.
I agree. I think too that if they're judged on a movie, that wasn't their words, it wasn't their production. Like they can push it off on someone else. But when you go there, as we all know who stood on a stage, you put yourself out there. You put yourself out there. Not everyone's going to like you. You're not there to have everyone like you. You're there to speak to the exact people who are there to hear and receive your message. And that's not everybody. So you have to be okay with not everybody loving your talk.
Absolutely. 100%.
So I would tell people get out there, get on stage and fail big because if you touch the one person, Les Brown and me, decades ago, like literally I was in my 30s, so it had to be 3 or 4 decades ago. Hearing his message and having it be so impactful as a young mom struggling to be an entrepreneur, make me get hungry and make those changes and know I can push through this. I don't know where I would be today. I really don't.
That's really powerful, Jen. And I agree. It's that idea of pushing people and my version of what you said, which is very similar, is take the success you already have in one medium and just repeat it in others. So if we're talking, we'll use different frames here. If it's a celebrity, it's hey, you're already successful in movies. What was the formula that made you successful? Okay, I prepared, I studied my script, I did all this. Just apply the same rules. If it's somebody who's technicals coding all day, what made you successful at coding? Oh, Brenden, I sat there, I read all the books, and I got really good at coding. It's like, great. Apply that same success story here. How did you build your business? James. And then James goes, well, I sat there and I looked at every ounce of the operation. I hired the right people. I made everything right. And I was like, do the same thing in your speech. Just apply the same rules that you already know just to speak it.
Wow, that's genius. Like literally, that's genius. Before we finish up here, I wanted to talk about something super important since I have you on the show. We were talking earlier about people pitching themselves. Like when you're pitching to get on stage, you don't want to have multiple topics, right? They are hiring you. Remember, we're picking someone who's going to have an inspirational story or a motivational story that's authentic, that they practice on other stages, hopefully, so that when they're on there, they're comfortable, that it just flows out of them. They hit their right spots. They're connecting with our audience. How do you pitch yourself to stages when you want to be able to finally take that light and share it with more people?
Yeah, absolutely, Jana. And honestly, your answer is probably better than mine, but I'll give you my version of it, which is it always starts from the event planner's perspective. which is what are they looking for and why is it important for them to fulfill that need? And a lot of speakers, a lot of thought leaders don't start that process in their mind, which is simply this. They're taking a lot of risk hiring you. They're spending a lot of money on this event. They spend all year organizing this thing. If you flop, they flop. So for them, the mindset with a lot of the people I know in the event space is they're very risk averse. Truth be told, they should be, because sometimes in some cases where they're not the main organizer or the people funding the cash for that event, their jobs are on the line. So they need to make sure they're picking the right person. That's why the event planner will always opt for the specialist versus the generalist. In very exceptional cases, the generalist will be picked, which is often a celebrity. But even the celebrity is still fixing a problem for the event planner, which is we're selling tickets for the event. That's the problem that they're solving for. There's a lot of people in the speaking industry, they don't think about that. So that's the frame. So the second piece is let's assume we're not a celebrity, or else the advice doesn't work. If you're a celebrity, just get booked on shows, but most of us aren't. So we have to take the specialist route. And that's really the reason why we need to focus on it from the event planner's frame. Now let's go back to us. So what is the best way to figure out our specialization? You know, the way that I've done this in my industry, or for myself anyways, is I just study other speakers who are speaking similar topics as mine. Take 30 minutes out of your life, just look up a bunch of speaker bureaus in the world. It's not hard. Like, they're all there. Look up NSA, National Speakers Association, see what everyone else is getting paid for already to speak on. And that's what what event planners are looking at. And then the last 20% is really what is your unique take on that existing topic. Simon Sinek isn't the first leadership speaker in the world. Daniel Pink isn't the first leadership speaker in the world, but it doesn't matter. It's about what is your angle to that. And that's how you then pitch yourself back to these event planners and these different people. And I've done the same thing. I've had a lot more success in the podcasting route, where I think the reason I've probably booked on 500 podcasts so far in my career. And the reason is because I just love them. They're so much fun for me. So I just do them for fun. But the other reason is because I have a very specific niche expertise that there isn't a lot of people speaking on. It's pretty much like me, Vin Zhang, Alex Line, Vanessa Van Edwards, and maybe like Joseph. And it's probably like 5, 6 people who are big in this space. And that's why I get booked a lot. And it's really about being a specialist here.
I agree, 100% agree with that as far as pitching yourself, because I've had people that we've sent for television slots, and when they're not picked, I'm like, why did you take them? We don't know what they do. We can't have them on television and be rogue and we have to know exactly what they do, what their messaging is, who they are, and what we're going to talk about. And I'm like, of course you do. And I went to this person's website. I'm like, oh, I don't know what he does from here. And so I had to go find a couple of the YouTube videos that really explained what he did. And it's not our job, their job to do that. If you don't do it for them, they're going to move on to the next person. So make it very clear what your specialty is, what you're going to talk about. And if that is a YouTube video you created and you're giving it to them to show, highlight that way. They see how you are on camera. They see how you speak. They know who you are and what your messaging is. So that YouTube got him booked on several things. So thank goodness for that.
That's amazing. Congrats.
I love it. So I am super grateful that you let me switch you to this podcast, because I really feel like this message needs to be heard to so many people, especially my clients. They need to know that. I'm going to ask you, maybe you'll know this and maybe you won't, but for big stages, like I have speakers who want big stages, but they've never even been on a little stage. I, as a promoter before, would not book you. I don't know if you're going to be vomiting, shaking, forget what you're saying, not follow the cues. There's so much going on. You can't see an audience. You're talking blindly because there's lights in your eyes. Like, it's a lot. And until you get that experience, so they're like, well, I have a best-selling book and I should be doing this, or I'm a celebrity. Look, until you get the speaking on stage, no one's going to give you the big bucks. So find those little spots, find those little niches to practice, so that you can say, oh, I've spoke on these stages. I've shared them with these keynote speakers, which is really big for you to say, I've shared the stage. Well, I shared the stage with Hugh Jackman once in front of 35,000 people. So that's really good to use when they say, oh, that's a big name. She carried herself on that stage. She's not that big of a risk to put on this stage. So build it from those little stages up. How would you suggest that they do it maybe other than that? Or would you absolutely say, yeah, if you have to pay $1,000 to go speak on this little event, do it because that's money invested in you moving to the big stages?
I mean, Jana, you're hitting on a lot of points. We're very similar in our thinking, by the way. We just approach it from different industries, but it's the same logic here. I'll give a more of a tough love approach to this, which is a little bit for today. I feel a lot of people want opportunities too quickly in the speaking business before they deserve it. And I'll give you the best example with me. I had no credibility going into this industry. This is probably 5, 7 years ago when I started coaching people at a professional level. I was a kid out of college. I had a bachelor's degree in accounting. I didn't have the answer. Nothing was given to me in this industry. I really had to earn the name that I have today. And I'm still working on it. I still have a lot more ways to go. But the reason I tell you that is because the reason I get booked to speak now for money is a simple advice that a lot of us unfortunately have a little bit too much ego to take, which is just speak for free. Like, I know it sounds simple, but like, would you hire a doctor to do a surgery on you if they've never done a surgery? Probably not. In the same way, why should an event planner pay tens of thousands of dollars for a speaker who has never done a speaking engagement in their life? I mean, that sounds ridiculous to me. And I'll tell you how I got my first speaking engagement. It wasn't some fancy bureau. It wasn't, I knew this person or that person. Yeah, sure, I got some of those connections today, but it wasn't the case at the beginning at all. And I think that's more relatable, which is I just gave a free training every 2 weeks, which I still do today, even if I don't have to anymore. I do a free training. It's a Zoom call. There's no pitching. I just come and I keynote and I share ideas. And you know what happened? A lot of big company executives just started coming to that training because they wanted to see the founder of MasterTalk give a presentation because I was posting on social. They would watch me present and just go, wow, this kid's amazing. I have to get this person to come to my company and present, and I got paid a bunch of money to do that, but I earned those opportunities, and that's really the lesson. I don't the only thing I would say is I don't think it's necessary to get paid on a stage. I don't think that's 100% the case unless you need it for a speaker reel. Okay, if there's a big stage and it looks really nice and you've scoped out the venue and it's legit, okay, spend $1,000 and speak on it just to get a speaker reel going. A speaker reel, for those who are listening, just means it's what you send to a bureau or an event planner so they can get a sample of how you talk on a stage. And it's just like an assortment of clips. So if you want, in that case, do it. But I think the main idea is to go back to what Zig Ziglar said, which is, hey, I spoke 3,000 times for free before I ever got paid to speak. And I think that's the motto you want to have, because those are the people who win and last in this game.
I love him. Thank you so much for coming on this show. You guys, we're going to put all the links to his YouTube channel. There is so much goodness on there if you want to start diving in and learning how you can approach being a better speaker and communicate better. It's all about communication. It's all about sharing from our hearts when we are sharing on stage. Even the scientists are sharing from their hearts. They're nerdy and they love that stuff. It's literally coming from their hearts. So thank you so much, Brenden, for being on the show. I love you. I think you're amazing.
By the way, the feeling is mutual. I just love your energy, Jana, from the first time we had a call together. So I was really happy to come on and do this show.
Thank you. Have a wonderful rest of your day. You guys go check him out on YouTube. There's a plethora of information.